You may have heard of your shadow self or the term shadow work, but what is this really? And how can knowing about your shadow impact your life in a positive way? That's the topic of today's video, so stay tuned to learn more about this fascinating concept. I love it. There are 4 archetypes of shadows that fall upon us all. Some of us have elements of all 4 shadows that show up simultaneously or at different points in our lives. Some may have 2 or 3 coexisting, and some of us struggle with only one that continues to show up time and time again. They can rise and fall, they can exist simultaneously with each other, or sometimes it can stubbornly remain ever so present part of our life. Our shadows may rear their heads at challenging moments in our lives, or they can actually be the cause of those challenging moments. When I work with people to understand why they are making certain choices against their happiness, I like to use shadow work understanding because we all have 4 archetypes that come from our inner world, which is our spiritual body, and our spiritual body houses our self-esteem. For example, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, and I don't have value. Shadow comes through our spiritual body and is manifested through our actions. If you feel worthy and valuable, you will never create from your shadow. You'll be able to take responsibility, move through a difficult experience, and while examining your choices with probing questions such as, why did I make this choice? How can I grow from this choice? The shadows that reside in our subconscious mind and influence our decisions and actions, whether we detect their presence or not, are as follows. 1. The hurt or wounded child. The beauty of the wounded child is that it has the most optimistic hope of a young child. It always wakes up in the morning excited, even if it's wounded, but will still have hope for better things the next day. It is the part of ourselves that has this innocence of a little child that has been hurt and is looking for someone to make it better. Our inner child is always yearning for freedom and play, while simultaneously shielding their own wounds protectively. The wounded child is not emotionally hurt and lets people hurt them because they do not feel like they are in a position to stand up for themselves. The wound that the wounded child is shielding is usually something that occurs in childhood, some unhealed part of the child that was hurt, usually by the parent, but it could be from a parent who is hypercritical or controlling, emotionally or physically abusive, or an emotional trauma event such as a parent divorce, which leaves them feeling confused, guilty, shame of their broken family. The next one is number 2, and 2 is a saboteur. The saboteur comes out 2 times in our lives when we're about to have a huge breakthrough, but we do not believe or have the self-esteem to believe that we deserve it. And the other time is when we're going really smoothly in our life, but there's a part of us that does not believe we deserve happiness. In both cases, since you do not believe that you can handle it or deserving of the success, the breakthrough, the happiness, the relationships, you do something consciously or unconsciously to sabotage it. So you can prove to yourself via your self-fulfilling prophecy that you were right. So you are able to think to yourself, I knew things could never work out for me. And 3, the victim. The victim is the most common of the shadows. Being a victim is when you refuse to take responsibility for your actions and you make yourself a victim. For example, everything is happening to you by blaming everyone outside of yourself as the cause. It's as if you're making everything about you while taking absolutely no responsibility for the role that you play in the circumstances that are created in your life. Being a victim is often the easy way out, specifically when it is too painful to be accountable, and it feels easier and less threatening to simply just point the finger at someone or something else, anything else, that you do not have to deal with the circumstances you have consciously or unconsciously created. That is when the victim appears. And 4 is one of my favorites, the prostitute. The prostitute comes in many forms. It's when you're prostituting yourself out and you sell your happiness for money. It is when you are selling yourself short. You sell out or you give your power away in an exchange for something else that you think you need. In a relationship, if a girl is dating a guy because he has money, maybe he's helping her pay for school, letting her stay at his house with her kids, or just supporting her lifestyle. It is also where you give away all your power for stability or comfort in a relationship, even if the relationship is abusive. The prostitute can also be about yes people. People who say yes to anything will do nothing to follow their own power and their own guidance, but they will use other people to support their needs. A prostitute can symbolize anything you give your power away or sell yourself short to meet someone else's demands or expectations. It can even be about getting paid to do a job that drains your spirit and your energy, or a job that you know that you just won't like, but you put yourself there and you don't put yourself first. The shadows do not only show up in a single file, one at a time. In truth, they can overlap, they come all together and play together. I mean, you can even have the victim, the saboteur, and the wounded child all at once. Or shadows appear to show us where we still have work to do on ourselves. I mean, they magnify a part of ourselves that needs healing. When they come up and when we're able to identify them, it's an opportunity to transcend. But they are called shadows because they like to operate in the dark, in the shadow, in the background of our conscious mind. The best way to overcome them is to shine a light on them, scrutinize them under the light of day with a deep reflection and analyze. Sit there and think, can I work through them, past them, and how can I get my power back? And when you can identify the shadow and which shadow that you're in, you can transcend them by acknowledging them, and you take responsibility for them being there, being in the situation that you got yourself in so that you can transform it. The minute that we act as creators and not a victim, the minute you take responsibility, it lifts the weight. And when we take responsibility for our choices as a creator rather than the victim, is when we shed the skin of our past selves and we transcend into our wise selves. Thank you for listening. Find me on Instagram at Jennifer the Alternative for weekly updates. And Fridays, I do Freebie Fridays where you can ask me a question and I actually personally will answer it. Have a wonderful day. Sending you lots of love.